Live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Welcome back to Fox 12 Now. Thank you for joining us. I'm Greg Nibbler here live from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. And as we've been doing for the last 3 days and even leading up to the beginning of it, we are talking about the district court trial going on in the city of Portland right now. Started on Wednesday into the third day, the final stretch almost, it seems like, of this, where we have been hearing from the city of Portland and the state of Oregon, who have sued the Trump administration regarding the legality of sending in National Guard troops to their ICE facility in South Portland. This is the overall legality of that. There are some other things going on in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals regarding restraining orders, but for this segment, we're going to be focusing on the trial itself, and we have a lot to go through here from today, joined as always by Spencer Schacht here over the last couple of days. And Spencer, we have covered a lot of this here, and I think today, we're seeing, and even the starting of yesterday, we saw the defense going through, having their say, and I thought if you want, maybe we should go through some of this just for those watching. I've got it all printed out here in paper in front of me. And to start off and talk about what some of these big moments are that we've seen so far today.
Yeah, definitely. I have our notes right in front of me on my phone as well. But before we get into that, I'll just say the first 2 days of this trial, we've heard from PPB. They testified about how startling and how much of excessive uses of force they saw from federal agents. Then on day 2, we heard from federal agents for the first time, and they talked about the staffing issues that they were experiencing. And we heard a little bit more about that today with the first witness who was called by the defense today, and that is Major General Timothy Reiner. He is the Major General and acting Vice Chief of the National Guard Bureau, so he oversees the National Guard from all states, all across the United States. He's been the general for 1 year. He's between June 25th to the current day. He's experienced deploying the National Guard in multiple times of distress all across the country, from natural disasters to border enforcement to instances like this where law enforcement needs a little bit extra help on the ground. And according to his testimony, he told the judge today that in his experiences, 30 years of service with the National Guard in one capacity or another, he says when the National Guard is deployed, it tends to have a calming effect on the community. He talked about how when the National Guard was deployed down in LA, he said that a lot of the looting and a lot of the crimes stopped once the National Guard was on the ground there. So that was really what the lawyers for the federal government were trying to get at, is the good that could come from the National Guard being deployed to Portland. He talked about the difference between Title 10 activations. That's when the National Guard is activated by the federal government, the Department of Defense, rather than a state's governor. He testified that they gave Governor Kotek the opportunity to activate the Oregon National Guard. She refused to, and so that's why the Department of Defense got involved and they activated Title 10, and that's what started this whole court case here. Looking through the notes. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, that's kind of, what got this whole thing going, just agreeing with you. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no worries at all. So, we were just saying they talked a little bit about Trump's post on Truth Social on September 27th, calling for the National Guard to be deployed. It was back when that happened in September. There was a lot of discussion of, does this count as an actual deployment, because it was not an official memo from the Oval Office. It was a tweet sent by the president. And so they talked about that a little bit in court, and they did, Major General did clarify they had to get a couple more clarifying issues from both the president and from the Department of Defense, that saying, yes, they do want to federalize these troops. So clearing up some issues that we saw there when this was all going down back in September. And then those were the main points that they talked about on the direct questioning of the Major General.
Yeah, so it's definitely some time spent with him today. I saw one other thing that he said. The Major General said that with the National Guard, that the National Guard has never been to the Portland ICE building, and he was only aware of the conditions through media and court reports. And they tried to clarify that. He was seeing that in the media. That was part of that back and forth that they had. And And yeah, all going down to this, the back and forth there between the two of them. See, how common are weapons in deployment? I've never seen us go somewhere without our weapons. Again, speaking about the National Guard. So certainly some big, a lot of time spent with him right there. And, some of the other interesting things from today, too, just that, the head of the district for ICE talking about how they want to increase hiring, which we've seen that in other reports as well, that it seems like ICE all around is hiring, but also that they have a target of 30 arrests per day in association with immigration. So this is information that came out during this cross-examination, during the just testimony that was going on here today. So I think, for one thing for me is that did seem to, illuminate a lot of info as, or at least a little bit on how operations actually work there for ICE on their side and for the Portland Police, quite frankly, in the first couple of days.
Yeah, definitely. With that second witness who was called, her name was Camilla Wamsley. She is the field office director for ICE. She's based up in Seattle, but she does oversee the ICE facilities down here in Portland. You were talking about her cross-examination, or her initial line of questions that the federal attorneys were asking her of. When she stepped into this position, she wanted to see an increase in arrests. She wanted to see a decrease in the amount of time that detainees spent in custody. And she wanted to see 30 arrests a day. But in her testimony, she was saying that they were not able to meet those goals that she set when she stepped into this new position. And the reason she said, or she claims, was because of the ongoing protests outside the ICE facility. She says they were really kind of making it hard for these ICE officers to do her job. At one point, she said if they make an arrest late at night, they will not process them at the ICE facility on Portland South Waterfront because there is so much protest activity out there. Instead, they will drive them straight up to Tacoma to have them processed and detained up there, even though they were arrested down here in Oregon. So a lot of interesting things coming to light in her direct examination, but on her cross-examination, the things that really stood out to me was they were talking about that first big protest outside the ICE facility back on June 13th and 14th. Mm-hmm. On that day, we've heard in testimony that windows were broken, the front door was chained. It really kind of brought the ICE facility to a standing halt, but she testified that there was no one working in the ICE facility on those days, and that they were able to quickly get the windows replaced and get the gate working again. They expedited those repairs and were able to be up and running within a few days versus the weeks that they expected that would take. She said that they set the 30 daily arrest goal. She's the one that set those. Is that a goal set by any other department? And she said no. Another thing that came up on the cross-examination was they were really asking her what type of records they keep at the ICE office, specifically how much ammunition do these federal officers go to, or how much ammunition is fired from the roof of the ICE building onto protesters on the street. And she said they don't track that number, and that seemed to take the judge by surprise. And the judge reiterated the question saying, what do you mean you don't keep track, or you don't keep records in the ICE facility? And the director of the ICE facility said, we don't keep records of that sort. So that was an interesting point that was brought to light this afternoon.
Yeah, talking about those chemical munitions and some of the different instances of that. And again, this is all, talking about some of the things from today. There's a lot to digest over the last 3 days, but, this is where we're at right now with the Portland Police, largely being that first day, going into the second, and now the defense, and then, of course, this district director, and then, deputy district director, I believe was that the correct title, just to make sure that I have that right.
Yes.
Deputy, okay. And then also the Major General there from the National Guard. It's a lot of people that we're looking through here sometimes, so I want to make sure I got those titles correct. But now, the court is back in session. When they go to recess throughout the day, that's when we're able to report on what's happened. So each recess is like, okay, we can talk about everything that happened previous to that. When they're in session, we're not allowed to report on that, even though we do have reporters in there. We have Ezra in there and Peyton as well. But right now, it sounds like they're into the closing arguments, I believe is what they were going to be getting started on, or at least that's what we were thinking.
Yeah, after that last witness stepped down, Wamsey, they took a short break, and they said when we come back from break, we are going to get into those closing arguments, and that would be the end of the trial here. So we're expecting to hear from both the plaintiffs will go first. They'll lay out their case, thinking back to their opening arguments, or opening statements, excuse me, that they made back on Wednesday. They were laying out their case, saying that it's going to be that ICE is operating just fine. Yes, there are protests happening outside, but it's nothing that PPB can't handle. They haven't been a large disruption, especially not since June of this last June. There was the major protests. There was a lull in protests over the rest of the summer, and protest activities didn't jump back up again until after the president called for the deployment of the National Guard to Portland. So those were the arguments they were making in their opening statements on Wednesday. We can expect they're going to be making similar arguments today, but pulling from examples that we heard throughout the trial this week. And then for the opening statements for the defense here, which are the federal agents in this case, they're continuing to say that Portland, there were riots, that there was a rebellion being caused, that the number of protests, the continuous protests that we're seeing rise to the level of rebellion. And that's a note that the Judge Emmergut made in her kind of direction to the lawyers today at the beginning of the trial. Is after today's trial, they have to write up a brief that they are going to send her by the end of the weekend. And one of the things that she specifically asked for in that brief was the definition of a rebellion. So I'm assuming that we'll hear more this afternoon of what the defense defines as a rebellion, and I would expect to hear them talk about that in their closing arguments. Yeah, I'm looking here too. She wants perspective on definitions of rebellion. I believe that's regular forces and any authority from the Seventh Court decision. That's the other Seventh Circuit Court decision, excuse me, that's going on regarding Chicago right now. So they're going to take into consideration some of that stuff. But yeah, so looking like she wants those briefings by Sunday, and then she'll make her decision. There's no timeline specifically on that, I don't believe. She can kind of take her own time to make that decision. So we don't really have like a deadline of we'll know by this date, right? No deadline for when she has to make a decision. Just a reminder, this is a bench trial, not a jury trial. So the decision is just up to Judge Emmergut. And she has set deadlines for the attorneys to set their briefs. I believe that is noon on Wednesday is when she wants to see those on her desk. She'll take a few days, I'm sure, to look over those briefs, review her own notes from the case from the last 3 days of this trial. And we could expect to hear, I believe, that we expect to have her make her decision sometime next week. But there is one thing that is pressing, speaking of timelines, is that second temporary restraining order that blocks other states' National Guard members from being deployed here in Oregon. That expires on Sunday of this week. So it would be interesting to see if she decides to extend that TRO before the end of the trial today or before the end of the weekend, because if that TRO does expire, that would allow the president to deploy the California National Guard, the Texas National Guard, National Guard from any other state here in Oregon, as long as that temporary restraining order expired. Yeah, and that's while this whole legal issue still plays out on the other side for the Oregon side of things. So a lot to find out, and I know there's speculation too that, again, there's a lot of different avenues depending on that TRO, depending on if the Supreme Court picks up, right away makes a decision on the Seventh Circuit Court. There's a lot of factors in there, but if it stays as it is, there's also, it seems to be a lot of speculation that whoever comes out winning or losing, however you want to phrase that, whichever side gets the way that they want, that the other side will most likely appeal that, depending on the outcome of some of those other things. So a lot to go on with this, but yeah, we'll find out more here. I'm kind of really interested to, as you mentioned, they're doing their closing arguments now. And probably largely the same as what they were talking about at the beginning, but it'll be interesting to see what each side pulls from the testimony to use as an example for their justification for what they're going for, and just to see how that all works out once we find out more about that. But yeah, a lot going on here in this, and for everybody watching too, if it seems a little bit confusing, it is. There's a lot happening on this. So we've been trying to, narrow this down and give you some of the big moments from there. This is hours of testimony.
that has been happening, hours. And we've got, a lot at kptv.com that people can go to too if you want to dig into it. But yeah, this is learning a lot about how the legal system works in association with something like this, which I can't think of a whole lot of examples of this that have gone on. There was the California situation, but it's something that we're all learning. I think some of us as we go. Talking about myself.
No, definitely a learning experience all across the board. And like you said, it is a little confusing, especially with multiple temporary restraining orders, multiple appeals, the appeals being put on pause, the Ninth Circuit Court issuing a stay, that stay getting overruled. It's been a lot of back and forth all the way through. So, but just a reminder, this hearing that is going on right now, or this trial, I should say, that's going on right now, is based on the merits of whether or not President Donald Trump has the authority to deploy the National Guard under Title X to Oregon, or if it was necessary at all. So that was what Judge Immergut will be ruling on after we hear these closing arguments. And like we mentioned earlier, we expect that hearing to come down sometime next week.
All right. Well, Spencer, thank you for keeping us up to date on all of this as we've been going through these last few days. And for everybody out there, if something does happen between now and 4, we'll get you an update. But Spencer will be back at our 4 o'clock news anyway with more, and I'm sure a lot more to come here throughout all of our shows, which, by the way, for everybody who's watching us right now, our news shows will be live streaming this evening because the World Series is on. So you can watch, though, our shows on the Fox 12 Oregon app. Great way to still follow along. We'll have the news going. You can watch the news while you also have the game on your television. So there you go. But thanks for being here, and thanks for being a part of it. And Spencer, really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, Greg.
All right, we'll let Spencer get back there. He has been standing there downtown outside that federal court building for 3 days. I believe he does get to go home in the evening, but we appreciate all of his help in breaking this down, because quite frankly, it is a lot. And if you want to find out more, and I know everybody's got their opinions on things, we're just relaying the facts as far as they come through with the testimony, but you can check out and watch all of our other segments. Again, Fox 12 Oregon app. If you're watching on YouTube, that's fine. There's more segments on there as well, but we do recommend the app as the best way, because we can send you a notification and let you know when there is breaking news, because right now, for this trial, when they're in session, we can't report on anything. When they go to recess, that's when we can. There's a deadline of 5 o'clock today, so that could, presumably there won't be another recess. It'll either end between now and 5, but that's all up to the judge. So if there's something else that happens, we will have that for you. But for right now, we'll sign off. We'll talk to you soon. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.